You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And welcome to Soccer Today. I am Duane Rollins. Kevin, as many that know me know that I've embarked on some strange, midlife crisis, I guess, where I've decided to run a lot. I ran 5 miles last night, and now I can barely hobble around the apartment. So
That's chairs, but why would you do that? Why would you do that to your body? Run 5 miles. Jeez, it's not helping your couch career.
No, it really isn't. And I missed like a good portion of the NCAA Final Four championship. I did watch the end. I had this argument with people last night on Twitter. I'm going to switch gears here. I had this argument on Twitter last night with people. I don't understand like diehard fandom of NCAA, of college sports, unless you went to that school. And maybe that makes me pretentious as someone who has a BA. Maybe I'm being a little protective of that, saying that you need to have gone to the school to be a fan. But
if you're from the city, you're from Little Rock, Arkansas. What else are you going to cheer for? Like, you have no pro teams whatsoever. But there's an amazing college, well, football here, not basketball, but still, they were pretty decent in the tournament this year, actually. Not too bad. But still, it's just an example. So that might be the reasoning behind a lot of fans of the college. And we're going to talk about college soccer as well when it comes to the Final Four and stuff, like we did a few months ago with Travis, like we always do every year. But it was a terrible game, too. So if you didn't miss anything by now watching the Final Four, the national championship game last night.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess teach their own when it comes to that stuff. And I do get the fact that the Midwest doesn't have a lot of professional sports, and that's why people might gravitate towards them. But I would argue that if you did actually go to those colleges, you probably have a little bit more of a stake in it than someone who didn't. And again, I appreciate that might make me a little elitist, but whatever.
But you know what I got from the game last night? That even in the NCAA March Madness world, people want Arsene Wenger's head. There's Wenger out sign popping up everywhere. There's signs popping up in the crowds at WrestleMania on Sunday, and there's signs popping up the crowd during March Madness final last night. Wenger out.
Yeah, it's as we were saying, Kevin and I were talking about this off air just before we came on, and it's almost a meme or a trope, as Kevin said. It's becoming like a crying Jordan of 2017. I'm guessing that some of the people that are putting that signs up now are they don't even quite even know what it means, and that's kind of when we've entered the theater of the absurd.
It really does. But speaking of theater of the absurd, Duane, sent me a text this morning. I missed it last night, but according to Spanish sources, the deal for Zlatan Ibrahimovic to go to the LA Galaxy is done?
Yeah, look, it came out around 11 last night. I was lying on the couch prone because I just run 5 miles.
Tying everything back together.
Yeah, and I was flipping through it. I saw like a photo of Zlatan in a Galaxy jersey, and I went, oh, it's someone's retweeting an April Fool's joke. And then I scaled down and went, oh, no, wait, this tweet went out like now. So Spanish sources are reporting that. So we'll see. I mean, look, it could be something as simple. There's smoke there, and we've been saying this for a while. And certainly, he's out of contract and coming for big money to LA Galaxy isn't exactly the strangest move we've ever heard now. We're long past the point where that would be weird. But
you mentioned smoke. The smoking gun, Duane, is an actual offer that we have heard has been made by the Galaxy a few weeks ago.
Yeah, precisely. Which is what this report could be. Is just someone on deadline hasn't had anything juicy, because if you've ever been to that part of the world, you'll note that a lot of the reporting is speculative, we'll say, and they're just looking for something to get headlines or to get clicks, and then that might be what this is, and we're just picking it up over here today as being something more than it is right now. But certainly, as you just said, smoke or fire. I'm probably going to wait until it's actually official to break down in any real way, but it's pretty obvious that, and we have already talked about this, that Zlatan to the Galaxy would be a very intriguing prospect in terms of what he would bring to that team in the second half. And they certainly need something. It comes down to effort again. We talked about that yesterday with Schweinsteiger and Pirlo.
All right, Duane. It's Tuesday. It's rainy. It's kind of feel like spring is slowly coming, but one of the indicator of spring for me now is the CONCACAF Champions League, better known in the Mexican world as the Conca Champions. And the Conca Champions is back tonight. Dallas with an opportunity to be the third MLS team to make it to the Conca Champions finale.
Yeah, it's also known in Mexico as the Mexican inter tournament, right? Like this
as a Mexican Cup.
Yeah, it's the Mexican Cup, exactly. Pachuca, Dallas tonight. This is the one that I think most of the diehard MLS fours out there are been looking forward to. I mean, the Whitecaps are in it as well, and we as a Canadian show will certainly pay some attention to the Tigres Whitecaps game tomorrow. But in terms of the rest of the league, this is the one that they've had circled for a long time. This is the team that they feel in an FC Dallas that has a legitimate chance in their mind, the most legitimate chance of any team, since the Impact's run. Although the Impact's run was a Cinderella run, I think people think that this might be one that's less of a Cinderella run. They're up against a Pachuca team that is currently sitting, I believe, 5th in the table. Just checking here. Yes, 5th. So not really a simple task for them. Obviously, they have to deal with all of the altitude, all of the pollution and smog and everything else that a game in Mexico City will provide. And look, I will be very surprised if FC Dallas does come out of this one, but they do have the lead going into a second leg. And I do agree with the general idea, Kevin, that they probably are the best MLS team to be at this stage. No offense to the Impact fans. Again, it was a Cinderella ride. It was a magical Cinderella ride. But in terms of overall talent, I think you've got to say the defending Supporters Shield champions at this state of the competition do look better poised than past teams.
Yep. And if you don't know where Pachuca is a small city a little bit northeast of Mexico City. It's a faraway suburb, if you want, of Mexico City. And it's a place that we have seen MLS teams, the Montreal Impact, have resolved to draw from Montreal at Pachuca. You never know what can happen at Stadio Hidalgo. And for Dallas, it might be another possibility. It might be a place where, for the second time in 3 years, an MLS team goes over Pachuca. Maybe it's possible. I have a feeling it's more probable, at least, like you mentioned, than the Tigres-Vancouver game. Tigres is dominating Mexico right now. It's been talked about by the likes of Tom Marshall of ESPN-FC as one of the best Mexican football club team ever assembled, and that is not a hyperbole. So it's going to be difficult for Vancouver tomorrow night. But for Dallas, this game against Pachuca, they have the advantage as well. Can they hold on? Can they close it tonight? That's the question. And fortunately for Dallas, they had the game postponed in the weekend, so they're coming into this game fresh, which won't be the case for Vancouver.
Yeah, look, it matters. Look, the Whitecaps game, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Tigres, although as you say, is immensely talented on paper, they are struggling a little bit in terms of the table right now. But I will believe it when I see it. When I see a Mexican team fall, when I see an MLS team make the final and win this thing. I will believe it when I see it. And I think that based on the results that we've seen over the years, that's really the only way to approach this. But, I am not one for and maybe we'll move into more of a general conversation here. I'm not one for the MLS 4 when it comes to the CONCACAF Champions League. It's club football. We don't necessarily need to, be rah for the league at all turns of this. Some people feel comfortable doing that, and that's up to you. But in terms of my own perspective, I'm not going to cheer for Dallas for the sake of cheering for Dallas because they're a Major League Soccer team. I think I might be cheering for Dallas tonight because it's a decent team that's been built the right way, and that's kind of what I like about this.
Yeah, the project, right? The Oscar Pereira project. You remember when Oscar Pereira went from Colorado to Dallas? We were wondering what's going on, why, right? 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we were like, how? It's a weird way it happened. And now we understand more. The project seduced Perea, and he was able to make that project reality and come to fruition. And the way that Ross has been managed when they had both fronts, when they were battling on both fronts, so the league and the CONCACAF Champions League at the same time a few weeks and months ago, a lot of changes, 6 changes to the starting lineup to make sure that they were fresh heading into the first leg of this one, or the second leg of the quarterfinals. So I do feel Dallas has a potential tonight to, I don't even call it an upset because of the way they played in the first game. Yeah, they were scored on. They were behind, but they battled and they got back equalized, and then they took the lead. And can they hold on to the lead tonight? I do feel Dallas is the favorite tonight.
Favorite. I wouldn't go that far.
Against Pachuca?
Pachuca's a class team down there. They have been for years.
They're very good, but I do feel Dallas is might be in better disposition, like maybe in a better mental state, a better physical state, a better opportunity right now because of the fact that they didn't play this weekend like the Whitecaps did. Or I think those reasons, it's wonder why. Did the Whitecaps ask for the days off? Maybe they just forgot to send the notice to MLS, like, can we get this game postponed? And Dallas did it. I don't know. It's interesting why it only happened for Dallas.
I think the fact that they were playing the Galaxy might have played a role in that one, but we'll leave that well enough alone for now in terms of the Vancouver side of things, why they didn't elect to rest. Look, I do like Dallas as a team. I like the project. I think that they're building things a good way. In terms of them being the perfect example of MLS 3.0, no, they're not, because they don't spend on the top end, and that might be the difference here. And this is ultimately whenever I see a Mexican team playing an MLS team, they just generally, in my mind, have more top end talent that can finish a game on a snap of a finger. And Dallas has some great players that they've developed. And certainly I do believe that aspect of it is much more important than most MLS teams do right now, or put forth right now. I mean, you'll have teams that will buy DPs. You look at the Fire, for instance, that'll maybe spend some money on a DP because it will have that marketing boost, but don't necessarily spend the money on the other side, the academy side, which is what's really going to need it. The combination is going to be what's needed to truly get MLS teams to the point that they're consistently competing for a CONCACAF Champions League. But in a one-off, if you have a very well-developed development team like Dallas has, then certainly you do have a chance. And again, when I'm not dismissing their strength, when I sort of snuffed off the idea that they were favored, I am just more, what I'm doing is respecting the strength of Liga MX, which is clearly still the best league in North America by an arm's length for sure.
Until the CPL comes in.
Exactly. Sure. I'm looking forward to that first Liga MX CPL.
Sorry, I got my dates wrong. I thought we were Saturday. I thought April Fool's was still today.
Yeah, the Halifax Wanderers. By the way, I think they should be called the Wanderers. It just that flows off the tongue easier. But anyway,
it makes sense. It would be a good way to have everything tied together, I feel.
Yes. All right. That's quickly the last minute of the block here, Kevin. Look, you've already said you think they're the favorites, so let's put our neck out and put a prediction on for this game tonight. How do you think it's going to finish?
Not going to be easy, but they'll get that away goal. And that way they're going to protect themselves, because Pachuca did have that away goal too. But I feel Dallas ekes it out. Won't be easy, but by the skin of their teeth gets their qualification for the CONCACAF Champions final. And then we'll talk tomorrow if there's going to be an all MLS final. We'll get to it tomorrow. Let's keep the suspense. But for tonight, I think Dallas gets it done. Maybe I'm over optimistic. Maybe I'm just still a little too innocent. That's possible. But Dallas wins tonight. If not on the scoreboard, on aggregate.
The score that I have for tonight's game is FC Dallas 1, Pachuca 5. All right, Kevin, on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, and we're going to talk some women's stuff and the David Moyes stuff.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Welcome back. Hope you all wrote down the predictions there. Kevin and I usually are fairly close together on our predictions, but we're a little bit far apart on this one. David Moyes.
Here's another prediction. Will David Moyes be back as Sunderland manager next year? Oh.
This is one of those like modern things that is going to flare up, and there's going to be a certain side of this. If you don't know what this is about, I mean, it's all over the UK press in the last few days. The TLDR of it is that basically David Moyes made a comment directed towards a female journalist that said that if she asked, a bad question again, that she might get a slap.
Well, here, let me just read this, Duane.
Sure.
This is from the BBC. By way of a quick recap, a video has emerged of Sunderland manager David Moyes speaking to BBC sports reporter Vicky Sparks after he has concluded their on-camera interview following his side 0-0 draw with Burnley a couple of weeks ago. Just getting a wee bit naughty there at the end. Moyes twinkles about one question he didn't like. So just watch yourself. You still might get a slap even though you're a woman. Careful the next time you come in. Sparks can be heard giggling wanly in the background. Incidentally, just as the mockingbird has many different calls, so the female sports reporter has many different laughs. And that one almost definitely says, I'm going to tell someone in my private life that David Moyes was a creepy, weird to do to me at work today. So that's the quote, just getting a wee bit naughty there at the end. Just watch yourself, you might get a slap. That's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, giggling wanly is what this statement was. So yeah, look, this is one of those things. There's a lot of things going on here, and there are going to be men out there that are going to completely dismiss this as being hypersensitive. Whatever derogatory term you want to use with anyone that agrees with this might be stepping over lines in 2017 that were easily stepped over in 2010 or 2005 for most of the time, really. But there really has been a pushback in recent years by a lot of women, and I rightfully in my mind, but that's my opinion there. And I know that there are some men that think that we're all too hypersensitive in this world, so we'll just leave that well enough alone. But the bottom line is that I don't think there's any doubt which way history is moving. So when you're a bit old school, like David Moyes clearly is, it does speak, I think, to an attitude that makes it very difficult for anyone who doesn't come from that part of their understanding of the world to exist in their world. And we're going to talk about this from a pure journalistic standpoint.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going with it, Duane.
Yeah.
Man or woman, no journalist whatsoever should be made into a position like this where because he didn't like one question, he threatens to slapping you, even jokingly. It's not acceptable. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. As a journalist, after an interview where you were doing it's during an interview portion, a fair question, it wasn't like degrading or anything, and he threatened to slap a man or woman. This is unacceptable.
Sure, but he's more likely to say it to a woman. That's my opinion. Especially just the way that he sort of tries to intimidate there, and kind of that sort of leery creepiness to it. That's something that men don't deal with, and I think that it's something that as men you need to be aware of, because it does make it a very toxic environment for people to work. But you're absolutely right in terms of the sort of threatening aspect of how dare you ask me a tough question is something that's sort of more unique over there than it is here. Whereas I think in North America, whatever, they're used to it. They expect it. North America has far more press access when it comes to that.
Don't get me wrong. If you ask Bastian Schweinsteiger if he's going to play in the World Cup, you're going to get press. You're going to get coverage. You're going to get talked about, and not for the right reason. And it's going to happen. But if you do your job properly, and there's a way to deal with situation where there's going to be complaints to your bosses, complaints to your editor, whatever the case may be, if you are doing your job with an agenda. But not necessarily somebody telling you after the interview, hey, be careful next time, maybe so you're going to get slapped next time you walk in here.
Yeah, well, look, let's look at the Schweinsteiger thing and compare it. He didn't make the guy look like an ass. He just turned it around and used the correct terminology, which is usually what you do when, not that I get asked questions. I do get asked questions sometimes because I do interviews for people. And if I get asked a question that may not be as informed as maybe it would be in a more niche area, I will simply use correct terminology if they used incorrect terminology without commenting on it further than just using the correct terminology. And that's what Schweinsteiger did. That's a bit different in the sense that was just clearly stupidity that they were dealing with there, or
ignorance. Like ignorance is a better term. Lack of knowledge.
Yeah. At any rate, which I don't have time for it, but nonetheless, it was dealt with politely, whereas this was dealt with in a less polite way. Now, the other thing,
bully way, like let's face it, it's a bully. It's a bully behavior that was caught on camera.
Yeah, look at the better comparison in North America sports is you look at how some big Bill Belichick or big football coaches, college people that believe that they're bigger than the world, which is generally your NCAA big name guys or your NFL big name guys. They will. Well, in hockey, what's his name? Tortorella. Yeah, he does similar stuff like that, where you try and use intimidation and the fact that you're in this macho world and quote unquote you never played the game to get your position apart and just sort of hold your level of authority over them. Now that's getting off of the female side of this, but what is also coming out is that David Moyes has made others female journalists have stepped up to say that he has made similar comments towards them in the past and has made their life more difficult than maybe it should have been. And this is something that I think spins into a greater sort of attitude within English soccer that is starting to change with some of the success that you're seeing with the women's game there, both on the national side and emerging sides like Chelsea and Manchester City and Arsenal and as well that have shown some success with their women's club teams. Yeah. I think that you're seeing a change in attitudes there, but it's slower than it is in other parts of the world, Kevin.
No, exactly. And where this situation becomes even more interesting is when you look at David Moyes himself, the caliber of coach that he has, where he coached before, United, Everton, his stint in Italy wasn't the greatest, but he is a high-level coach that is internationally known at high-level jobs in the world publicly, and to have that behavior widespread like this, like publish and broadcast like this widespread, it's not a good light on the world, the community, the sport, the way that things are supposed to be technically in 2017 in a post publicly correct society. You would think that things should be better, quote unquote.
Yeah, and look, and this is coming on, just ahead. We're about 3 months ahead from the Euros, the female Euros, where England probably has its best chance to win a continental championship in on any side of the gender divide in a very long time. The Lionesses are poised to be one of the favorites heading into that tournament, although I might point more towards France as your favorite. But nonetheless, I do think that England has a good shot in that tournament. And that's, kind of unfortunate that this sort of is what the attitude and what the conversation is happening right now. Now, this does tie in a bit loosely, but not completely. If you look at David Moyes and you accept the idea that maybe he has some attitudes that might be labeled misogynistic by some, and then you consider that he was hired by Manchester United very recently and sort of fit into that culture there. And then you tie into an article that was in the Independent just last week that sort of chastised Manchester United for being the last of the mega clubs that does exist without a female program. And, you sort of understand that attitude can creep in at the highest levels and can directly affect women. The fact the Manchester United board doesn't seem to think that it's a problem, that there's no female team there, even though every other major team in the world, now with Real Madrid adding one, every other major team in the world has one. Does speak to the fact that, it's changing because every other team but United has it, but it hasn't completely changed because the biggest club in England, and they probably are, Liverpool can argue with me, but in terms of popularity, they probably are, still doesn't have a women's team. And that's a problem with that. And I think it's a mistake too, if you want to look at it from a marketing perspective, because how many young female fans are they potentially losing because of that, especially with Manchester City doing so well on the female side just across the city, right? But that's where I come down on that.
No, I know. There's probably no correlation between David Moyes himself and the fact that United still doesn't have
not
a women's team.
I mean,
no, but
thing.
No. What I feel there is United do not the benefits for them. Like I'm not even playing devil's advocate. If you're looking at where they are as a club, the benefits will not outweigh what they can lose. And with the financial fair play, it could be not necessarily as easy to achieve profitability the way their board wants, the way things are right now. For the good of the game, they should have a team that is for sure, especially the way it's going right now with the likes of Carly Lloyd joining Manchester City, with the big names flocking to the European League for women's soccer right now. You kind of have a momentum that the game is gathering on that side of the pond, and it would be time. It would be fitting now to have a women's program in United to be part of that momentum that has been created.
And the financial fair play model, actually, you can use women's football investment to offset spending on the male side. So it actually benefits teams to have the female team directly, if you want to be really cynical about it. It's one of the reasons likely that City started the program so strongly.
You're fair. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Nonetheless, all right. There's a couple other female issues that came up, that are sort of directly related to this, and there is, I think, refreshingly, and too late, there are a lot of people speaking up on some of this stuff. There, you look at the CBA negotiations with the U.S. women's national team and the USSF, and again, Kevin and I have talked at length, not in a while, but we've talked at length about how there's a lot of nuance to that when it comes to the compensation side of things that isn't necessarily directly related to equality. Some of it is, the question there is quality matters, and there are certain issues that apparently are being resolved in terms of the travel and the per diems and the things like that, that were they weren't equal and they needed to be dealt with, and apparently they have been dealt with based on some reporting that came out in the New York Times last week. When it comes to the direct compensation, that's a little more nuanced, as I said, because you have the NWSL, which the USSF is basically propping up and paying direct salaries into. So how much do you factor that into there? How much do you factor a bonus structured salary system versus a completely straight salary system? There's a lot of questions there. It's not necessarily as black and white as it sometimes gets made out, but certainly we're seeing progress on that side. The other thing that I saw that got spoken up to, and this is on the heels, not in soccer, but the U.S. hockey and the dispute that got resolved at the last second there. So there's a lot of these issues that are flaring up now, and then are sort of getting dealt with, and women are stepping up and advocating for themselves and making federations deal with it. The Irish women, and I found this interesting yesterday, and this speaks to a lot of the problems, outside of sort of the top 20 nations in the world that women face in this game. The Irish women held a press conference yesterday where they told the press in attendance that they had to share tracksuits, and the Irish Federation would make them change in the bathroom before they would play international games, things like that. It's just not even close to equal in terms of what's happening. And the argument that people that are a little bit conservative sometimes will say is that, well, they don't bring in the same revenue, so therefore this is okay. I don't know if that's necessarily necessarily we should be always looking at that free market about things. When
I was
it
like,
comes
does
to
it
sport.
always have to be about money? Does it?
Yeah.
No, it's not about money always.
No, and like these are questions that are not going away. But I think that the fact that I thought it was worth having a block based on the Moist stuff on to talk about these, because I think the first step, well, one of the first steps to get in to fix these things is to talk about them openly and to have honest conversations from anyone, any gender. We should be talking openly about fairness across the board. And I'm not sure that some of the stuff that we've talked about today was why. I know that a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the last 15 minutes isn't fair. Hopefully some of it will get resolved, and David Moyes might have to fall on a sword out of this one. And some people won't like that, but hey, don't say it then.
Exactly.
Right, take a break.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. The Bits and Bites on Soccer Today.
And welcome back. Kevin and I have a meeting that we are going to attend in terms of some of the business future of this network after this show. So we're going to go just one more block today. Wanted to start with San Diego and a study, I guess, that came out. Well, there's a study. There's no I guess about it.
I thought you were going to talk about Footy McFootface FC. No,
that is sorry. Yeah, well, let's start there. Yeah, they had a fan vote, which if you're gonna have a fan vote, you might want to limit your choices sometimes, or not include silly choices on there, because in the age of the internet and the ability to make things go viral, if you add something silly or you make things wide open, John Scott's going to make every All-Star team, and Footy McFootface is going to win your name the team contest. So if San Diego, I somehow figure that MLS will nix that, but right now as it stands, if San Diego were to win the expansion franchise, they would be the San Diego Footy McFootfaces. So at any rate, that's spectacular.
And you had a logo unveil on April Fool's, so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, look, it'd be funny. I mean, I'd have no problem with that. I was talking
it's not gonna happen.
No, I know, but it's because people take sports too seriously. I had a conversation with a Scottish expat that lives in Hamilton about the Hamilton Canadian Premier League, and he said to me, and I think sometimes in North America we get like so defensive about stuff. He goes, "No, man, I want the Hamilton CPL team," and he's very excited about it. He works in the soccer industry. I want the Hamilton's team to be called the most like bloody ridiculous North American name possible, is what he said. Like he wants them to be like the Hamilton whatever,
the Bullfrogs.
Yeah, something right over the top that makes no bloody sense, like that the like Super Green Machine or something. The Hamilton Super Green Machine. There you go. There's my naming suggestion for Hamilton's Canadian Premier League, the Super Green Machine. That's what he would like. So nonetheless, I think we take sports too seriously. But yes, we've gotten off filter here. This survey that they showed looked at sort of the popularity of soccer and compared it to existing MLS markets and to all of the bidding markets for the expansion, and what it found, and this isn't surprising. When I sent Kevin this, he said in breaking other news, water is wet, that San Diego by far outpaces the other markets that are bidding for soccer for an MLS team in terms of every measure that they used.
That's interesting. And you do have San Diego. It's kind of a weird place, right? Because there's a certain aspect of the tourism industry, small aspect. You're so close to Mexico. You have it's not. There's a lot of people passing through, so it's kind of interesting as well that this is a hub for soccer, basically. And you have indoor team like the San Diego Sockers. Shout out to my friend Mark in San Diego. But you do have potential there for a club, and now that study is interesting, showing there's a lot of soccer fans that viewership wise are tuning in for Major League Soccer games.
Yeah. There's three measures that they looked at, whether you play soccer, whether you watch MLS on TV, and whether you watch the World Cup. They looked at every MLS market in the United States. They excluded the Canadian markets, although in the write-up they just said Toronto. I assume they meant all of the Canadian markets, but maybe they forgot that other cities exist. Not my fault, nonetheless. Found interestingly that San Diego actually outpaces the MLS average, so they would come in above average. The way this is measured is they do it in percentage form. So it basically shows that when you're talking about play soccer, for instance, that San Diego, that they have 130%. 130 is the measure they put there. So that means that 30% above, sort of the average is where they come in on in terms of the amount of soccer players that they have there. The weakest of the expansion teams. I keep calling them teams. Expansion cities is Detroit in this, just a little over, they're 20% below the norm in terms of the United States. Second highest is Sacramento, with Raleigh actually coming in at third, which it might surprise some people there in terms of playing soccer. When you go to watching MLS on TV, so this is watching the World Cup. San Diego again outpaces everyone. Sacramento second, Raleigh-Durham third, Phoenix is fourth. Again, last is Detroit. So that sort of speaks to the soccer market there. And then the one that got everyone's attention is watch MLS on TV. San Diego comes in at about 30% above the national average in terms of the players watching. Again, same sort of measure here in terms of where these things are falling otherwise, with Sacramento, Raleigh, Phoenix. Nashville comes in pretty strong there too, as does Cincinnati, but Detroit again at the bottom. Although Detroit at the bottom, it's not like it's a massive difference, but nonetheless. And in terms of existing Major League Soccer cities, they watch MLS on TV a little about 18% more than the normal across the United States as a whole, which I find that interesting unto its own, that it's only 18%, but that's maybe a different topic for a different day. Kevin, does this data change any of your opinion on what the expansion sort of measures are going to be right now?
What surprised me is not just San Diego, it's Raleigh too. I'm kind of interested now. Okay, maybe that explains, because it came out of nowhere when we see that city in the expansion bid process in January. The level of interest of soccer as a sport in the region of Raleigh-Durham might be interesting, but to go back to San Diego, it does maybe confirm some of the hypothesis that people have been saying for a long time, that San Diego could be a perfect market for a soccer team in Major League Soccer. Their closeness to the Mexican border, to attract fans from both sides, to have a professional team fill the void of the Chargers leaving town. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and this just confirms it.
Yeah, and look, San Diego as an potential MLS expansion market has been something that I have been talking about since It's Called Football days. They really have, and it's gone prior to that. I mean, there's a major story back in the day that broke within Major League Soccer circles about how, teams were papering the house, basically. I don't know why it was newsworthy, but apparently it got a lot of press back in about the mid part of the last decade. It was when MLS was first starting to push for expansion and trying to present itself as being, part of the Big Five, they might call it. And this reporter in the San Diego newspaper was the one that actually broke this. And I think that's telling that there was real legitimate MLS journalism happening outside of the MLS markets, but it was in San Diego, and that's because the popularity of the sport is so strong there that it clearly is amongst the true mainstream in that city. And the stadium has always been the issue. Do they want to play in a massive NFL stadium that wasn't quite good enough for the NFL? I don't know, but if if you're willing to deal with the stadium side of things, I think that really it is, I wouldn't say slam dunk, but it is a very good market and a very good potential for success there. And it's why I picked it as one of the first two teams in. I do believe San Diego has the upper hand over a lot of these teams here. The other quick thing, just before we move on, that sort of caught me off guard is, we've heard here for years and years and years how St. Louis is like the spiritual home of soccer in the United States and how it deserves a team. And it's always seemed a bit odd to most people outside that sort of the most Midwest of Midwest cities would be that. But when you look at this data, it doesn't really bear fruit. It doesn't really look like it is truly the mecca of soccerdom there. Even when you talk about watch the World Cup, which is the simplest of these measures, the one that should reach the most mainstream, St. Louis is below normal. It is well below the average of the national numbers, and that makes you question whether or not it's as historically speaking it is, but right now whether has modernly worthy of a franchise in terms of comparison with the rest of these cities. Kevin.
Yep.
All right, you had a couple things you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, just it was reported once again yesterday that Alexis Sanchez of Arsenal is making a priority for a move to Chelsea in the offseason. And that will be interesting to follow for Chelsea fans and Arsenal fans as well, especially how this unfolds. Does it have to do with Wenger, with the dust up, with that alleged incident that might have happened in training between either Alexis and Wenger or another assistant? I don't know, but all signs point to yes, and all signs point to an exit for Alexis. So the Alexit will happen.
The Alexit. Yeah, certainly it doesn't seem tenable right now unless Wenger goes, and I'm increasingly thinking that he might not. It'll be interesting to see what the Arsenal fans' reaction to him would be if he were to go to Chelsea, which is, of course, a London rival. I would think that it might be similar to what Raheem Sterling gets whenever he goes to Liverpool. Oddly, when he goes to both sides of Liverpool, which I've always found very strange, but nonetheless, Raheem Sterling gets a lot of boos, is what I'm saying, and you might get the same. It's always tough when you go from one rival to another. It's something that never happened in years before, but in the modern era, in modern football, it seems to be happening more and more. That a lot of people will lament that there's no loyalty to the badge anymore. Although, I still think it does exist there, and I think players need to be somewhat cognizant of that because they do have commercial considerations that they need to consider. And if you flip to a major rival, that's going to, I think, not only offend the rival and their fans, but it might actually offend, and this might speak to some of why Raheem Sterling is booed by Evertonians. It might speak to something that they just don't like in the modern game, in a general sense, even if it relates to a team that they don't necessarily support, Kevin. So it'll be interesting to see whether that plays out. I think that maybe he might be better off to look to go to Spain or something. But nonetheless, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll keep an eye on it. And exactly.
All right. Any final thoughts there, Kevin?
Nope, no final thoughts. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Soccer Today. You can follow Duane on Twitter as well at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Stay tuned tomorrow for another live edition of Soccer Today at 10 a.m. And until then, have a great Champions League and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.